is cool. But anyway, the question that that you've got, the profound statement that you've got to start this podcast with is sweet or salted popcorn or both.
Oh, salted.
Oh no, we had this discussion at the end of the last one, and I said sweet and salted, and he was like, "Nah, sweet all the way." So we've got between the three of us a pretty terrible Odeon order, or some fighting or whatever. But
no, definitely salted.
I feel like it just ruins the experience. I compared it to eating gravel on the last podcast.
No, because if you go into the cinema where you'd normally have popcorn, you're probably going to have
but you know.
Do you? Oh my god!
Popcorn anywhere.
I feel like you're going to have a Tango Ice Blast at the cinema, and that's sweet. So you want something to offset it? That's my thinking.
No, I think I'm just sweet all the way with cinema food. I'm just like, fill me up with sugar and then I can sleep afterwards when it's all gone through me. Although you tend to eat it all before before the movie starts anyway. But
yeah, very.
I'm going to make a super neat segue into one of the things I thought was quite interesting. Speaking of like visuals, I noticed the way you guys in Heriot present the music visually, as in terms of like videography and just visuals, just looking at your Instagram, right? Like there's a very specific and obviously quite intentional look about all of it. Is there a particular person in the band that kind of directs that, and is it something that you all think about quite consciously? I'm guessing the answer is yes, but interested to hear what you have to say on it.
Yeah, so I think the person who kind of drove us to be that way is Jake, our singer and bassist. He is definitely very switched on with the visual side of the band, and that's something that we hadn't really focused on until recently. But then the person who does all of our videos and comes out on tour with us for photos and things like that and promo shots is a guy called Harry Steele, and he's just amazing. His brain works in some wicked ways. So those two really kind of drive the visual side of the band. We're all conscious of it. It doesn't matter who's doing the graphic for Instagram or whatever, we all have the same like concept in mind, I guess, so that everything flows with how we want Heriot to look. But yeah, Jake is the boy for that, and Harry.
Wicked, yeah. Well, it's good that they get the plug on here as well. But yeah, so because for me, like I'm a bit like I'm probably a bit boring in this regard, but like in my head, I'm like, although I know it's really important and it's a really fundamental artistic sort of expression in terms of visuals and things. For me, I'm just not that interested myself for my own music. You know what I mean? I think it's like really cool, but I think for me, I always find that there's a million and one things trying to distract me from writing a song, and whenever I think my head just goes any distraction from that, I'm just like, no, I can't. You know, I can't. I think it's important for bands, and I think it's great when you can find that extra creative outlet as a band. Whereas I'm useless at that. But what I was going to ask was, do you find that that's something that, like, thinking about all of these other things as like an up and coming band, thinking about your business, thinking about your visuals and your marketing, do you find that exciting and interesting, or do you find that kind of just gets in the way of the sort of creativity?
No, I think it's part of the creativity for us as a band.
Yeah, well, that's how it felt. I didn't want it to sound like I was sort of putting down. Yeah, that's how it comes across, I think.
Yeah,
with you guys,
I think
that's what I was trying to say.
We're very conscious of how whatever release we're doing is going to be visually interpreted as well as musically interpreted. But I mean, it just adds another layer of something exciting to do with your band, really. we all kind of share an interest for art and visuals and things like that. And it's nice to be able to have that other layer of your band, and you're just expressing yourself in another layer, really. Yeah, I think it just keeps things fresher as well, rather than here's another song, here's another song. It kind of encompasses everything that we wanted that song to achieve, or the mood of it, or whatever. I personally really enjoy that, and I know that collectively it's something that we will enjoy together as well.
Yeah, it's I think it's great when it can be part of the creative process, because then a song can be more than just a song. It can be like a whole. It sounds really, there's been experience, but you know what I mean. Like, it can be more than, it can sort of supersede just being the audio file song. You know what I mean? Like, it can be people associate things with it, and they can kind of draw their own meaning from it through other media than just audio. You know, I think it's a really cool thing. It's why music videos, I think, are so great, and why with YouTube nowadays, it's almost like you got to have a music video, but that's also really good because you can deliver another sense of meaning from the song with it, which is quite cool. I think it's important.
For sure. Yeah, I think everything is so visual now, whether you have like a business where you're not even selling something physical. Everybody has to have their own kind of image. But in terms of music, I think that's an amazing thing to have, because you're being more true with your art rather than just the music. You know, as I keep saying, it's a bit boring, but you have another layer.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I think like Mastodon are a band where I get excited for their album covers.
Yeah.
There are other bands where I get really excited, like what's there, like Baroness as well, and Converge. Like, I think that's artwork is something that's really cool. It's another part of the creative process that's just really interesting. So yeah, we've just kind of put that in our band as well.
Yeah. What's the is there like a sort of a direct meaning behind the kind of, I don't know how to describe it, the quite sort of wavy, sort of indistinct, you know, that some of the shots of you guys where it's very much motion blurred, kind of like, is there sort of some deep meaning behind that, or is it just that looks really cool?
I think a lot of things with Heriot's like visuals started off as subconscious and now have progressed into kind of meaning things. I think the blurred visuals and that kind of angle of everything being a bit abstract, again, is just there to kind of throw you off, in that you can interpret it however way you want to. We don't want to come in and say this is about this and this is about this. We kind of think it's cooler if whoever listens to it wants to decide whatever it is. Yeah, I think as well within our music, there's kind of like a layer of anonymity to it as well. It's not something that I've ever kind of spoke about before because it's never come up, but we don't actually tend to use like I or me or anything that relates to us as individuals in a very clear way. We kind of skirt around it if we are talking about something that we've experienced. The songs are never solely about us. So I guess that's why things are blurred as well. Yeah.
That's cool. Is there any, again, so I know the feeling of stuff coming up and then you go, oh, hang on, that's really cool. I actually do sort of identify with that. You know, you do something almost just by chance, like, and then suddenly you feel like actually that's part of how you do things now. I know part of it is people asking enough questions about it. Eventually you have to come up with an answer. Then you go, oh, actually, yeah. I like that. I certainly know that feeling. But is there any particular, this might be part of what you've already said, but is there any particular reason for not talking from a personal perspective? Is it so that it can be applicable to a lot of people? Is that kind of the idea there?
I think there's a few, for me personally, there's a few reasons. I think the meanings of songs for people change all the time. For me particularly, I can listen to a song from when I was like 15, 16, and now I interpret it so differently. And I think if I put my own feelings so definitely into a song, however I felt at that moment or whatever is there forever. If I'm saying that this is how I feel and I am doing this and you're doing this, and it's not going to be like that forever. It just makes everything so permanent. And I think it's nice to have songs that you can have many different meanings with. The other thing is, I think that a lot of people just write songs about themselves, and it's just a bit tedious to listen to people going like,
I totally agree, for the record. Yeah,
this is really awful and you're this horrible person, and then those two narratives are like just plastered around metal. I mean, you know, which is fine and great, but I mean, how many songs could we write about those two kind of themes, if you know what I mean?
yeah.
I
I know
know.
what you
Yeah,
mean.
that's kind of it with the fact that me and Jake don't really write songs from our own perspective that often. Well, ever. Not
Yeah,
ever, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I think it's
Um,
smart, and it does stop it from being locked in time. Like you said, it gives it that sort of impermanence, but in a good way. It can change, and it can sort of become what you want it to become, and it can still mean something to you in 20 years' time for a totally
yeah,
different reason. It might even mean the opposite thing in 20 years'
yeah, for
time.
sure. I think when you write something so definitely, there's always a chance that you could look back and almost regret writing those lyrics. You know, I know like a lot of bands who've wrote things about particular times in their life or particular people, and now they look back on it and I don't want to play those songs because I don't feel like that anymore, or this song is outdated because of this, this, and this. Our songs are never about one experience that whoever's wrote the lyric for that particular song has gone through. It's kind of like a collective between us and a theme rather than an event in our lives, if you know what I mean.
Mm. Yeah, and what do you think is maybe like, put you on the spot a bit, but what do you think is maybe like the most meaningful kind of, or the song that you maybe connect with the most out of the ones that you've put together? Yeah, what do you find? Maybe if it's just like one lyric, or if it's a whole song, or is there one in particular out
I
of
think
particularly the EP, or it can be any of the songs you've done?
I think um The Spirit was one that came really naturally to write lyrics wise, and I feel like that's a song that I said everything that I would probably want to say in that song. How I was wanting to, I guess. I think the lyrics in that kind of say how I feel about those themes that we were talking about at the time. I think there's like an interlude called Mutagen as well, which I'm quite happy with the lyrics with that.
Yeah, could you fire off a favorite lyric? I might make you sing it all. Like, I won't make you sing it. You know what I mean? Like, as in just,
um,
I'm really putting you on the spot. Sorry, I'd hate it if someone did
no,
this to
no.
me.
The lyrics are misadventure brought you here, swallowed you whole to the grey, and so it came from his mind. And
It's cool.
maybe that's not cool for other people, but I
Yeah,
just
it
like
is.
a short summary of
Yeah,
whatever.
I think it's so weird. There's something about writing lyrics that like, um, I find it quite like exposing, where like you're writing things and you think like, even if it's not personal, it inherently sort of is. And even if you're not writing about personal matters,
Mm-hmm.
I always feel quite exposed when I'm sort of trying to write stuff, because it's still even if it's not your sort of opinion, it's how you interpret something, and it's giving other people quite an insight into how your mind works. So I always find it quite sort of, although I enjoy it, like I always find it quite exposing, because you're revealing a lot about how you think about things, to anyone that pays attention. Obviously, you just got to hope no one pays attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when we were first writing lyrics together, it was quite daunting to like be like, yeah, this is what I've wrote on the toilet one day, what do you reckon? And feeling embarrassed about whatever lyrics you put. But I think me and Jake are very much on the same wave level. Like it's insane how similar our lyrics are, and we went and sat down and wrote them together. But when we show it to the lyrics that we've wrote, they're always really similar. And now we've kind of got over that fear of like exposing yourself in that way with lyrics. That's another reason why I don't really want to project any one person's view within the band. I just think I think being in music, there's almost like this entitlement for people to know you like as intricately as they can, even if they don't know you on a personal level. And I think you don't need to always project your feelings in such a blunt way. I think it's fine to want to shield your own feelings from such a public view.
Yeah, I think, well, it's obviously because of the nature of sort of music, that certainly music that you've put thought into, people are going to want to be like, what, you know, I guess they might even be unintentionally quite rude, not rude maybe isn't the word, but like invasive without knowing, because a lot of people do bear all in their songs, you know.
And that's great if you do want to do that. I just think they're so, and people can, especially if you are saying like, I am this, I feel like that, people can draw their own conclusions as to what you're talking about, and they might not be true. You know, people can think that they know you so well that, even though they might not, that you're talking about X, Y, Z, and you might not be. I don't know. Maybe this way of writing lyrics will change for me in the future, but I think for now, I like to, if we're writing songs to get out our emotions, I don't know whether we need to make those emotions so permanent for ourselves in a song forever and ever and ever. I don't know.
I know.
Maybe I'm weird.
No, you've got that. I think you've got it's a good. I resonate with that sort of perspective, because I think there is a lot of me in in how lyrics are written, and quite often, like, so we the lyrics in our sort of the I say, like, our first EP, it's the EP that we've released. The lyrics in that they're told from another perspective. They're told from like a godlike figure's perspective. So, and not like God, like not the Christian God or any other kind of. It's more just like a, you know, arbitrary kind of figure. Because I think that way it's not about. I agree with you. I find it a bit tiring sometimes when, unless there's a very unique take on why life sucks. Got to be a really, you know, like, I've heard a lot of songs about why life sucks from metal bands, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, for me, I'm always interested in writing something about this bit of life might suck, but, you know, I quite like putting a positive, not a positive, but maybe some sort of proverbial or sort of some sort of positive way of thinking on it, which isn't necessarily that unique in itself. I always try to be unique, but so does everyone. But I do think there's got to be some sort of spin on it, because, like you say, it worked for a while, and I think it's perhaps what resonated particularly with a lot of young people, a lot of sort of disaffected young people, who they're hearing people singing about the struggles of life and they can connect with it a bit. But I think actually there's some merit in finding new topics to sing about. I was chatting to James.
Absolutely, I think it's really...
go on.
Oh,
sorry. No, carry on.
I think it's really cool that you do put almost like a resolution on the end of it. I think that's wicked. Sometimes it can be a bit bloody overwhelming if you listen to loads of metal and everyone's just telling you that everything's awful.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, we try. It's like, yeah, like you said, it's little things. Funnily enough, like, credit to Tom, the producer we work with, because we had all these ideas, and they weren't really told from any perspective at all. They weren't my perspective. They were just like a perspective, you know. Like, although it said it wasn't a reflection of any of my personal, necessarily personal thoughts. But he was like, well, why don't you tell them from the perspective of a god who we called Brian, after like Life of Brian, you know. So yeah, and we thought, and that really worked for us, and actually managed to create a bit of a story out of it, which I think hopefully has some uniqueness to it. But I was chatting to James, Tesseract James Monteith earlier, and he was talking about, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in society nowadays that we can talk about that's important, and I think, you know, I was saying, even if you get your opinion wrong, you know, not wrong, but like, sorry, even if you express an opinion that's maybe not particularly useful or great, at least you're trying to express some sort of opinion about important matters, rather than just focusing on yourself, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you got any concepts in mind that you think, like, I'd like to write something about that?
I think I struggle with the same topics all the time.
Okay, yeah. I do know that feeling as well.
Yeah, I think all of my like lyrics always seem to struggle with the topic of just things being unjust. I find it really hard to comprehend, like, the duality of good and bad, and that's really deep, and there are so many different like topics and spins off sort of like.
You should write a song called Duality.
Do you think it'd do well?
I might do, yeah. Just don't play it too much.
Yeah, I think those are the kind of, unjust in the world is something that bugs on my brain a lot. But yeah, I think in the future, I definitely like to write a few more tracks about maybe femininity. I think it's a lot of times it's expressed in the same way. There's a narrative of, you know, women are powerful and women are amazing, which of course they are. And that's a narrative that's expressed a lot, which obviously I bloody love because I am a woman. And then, you know, there's other narratives that are like being a woman is really tough. And I think there's a lot of different avenues to kind of explore within femininity. And I think for me, I'd like to portray that in a way that is not any of those two narratives, but I just gotta find a way to work it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're already onto a winner by, like you said, finding your own perspective between those two. And when I say between those two, I don't mean like a halfway house between those two narratives. I mean like finding your own offshoot and how you want to talk about it in, like you're saying, a way that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily your experience. It's more how you want to discuss that idea. And I think it's good that, I think it's always good when people search for not just like their own opinion on an idea, but perhaps a part of that idea that hasn't really been talked about, or a way of looking at it, you know, flipping it on its head and going, what if we look at it this way, you know? I'm saying a lot of nothing right now, but
no, not at all. No, you ain't at all, mate.
Yeah.
No.
I think it's yeah, that must be, because one thing, obviously, you know, the traditional view of femininity and heavy metal traditionally, you know, you wouldn't necessarily put the two together. 50 years ago, if you asked someone what femininity meant, I don't imagine the first thing they'd say would be heavy metal. And I think it's quite cool that those definitions are kind of blurring in a good way, you know. And that,
yeah, and I think with metal, a lot of times, again, there are these two kind of images of women in bands sometimes, and it's kind of like you're going to talk about it all the time, or you're not going to talk about it at all. And there needs to be a medium of that, in recognizing the fact that for me anyway, I feel like I would not be doing women a service if I just completely neglected the fact that I am in a band and we have had to work hard to be, given the same amount of respect as males in bands. That sounds very generic, but it is just so true. Yeah. And I think you shouldn't be pinpointed to either one of those ideologies of a woman in a band. You can be in a heavy band and still portray yourself in a feminine way, or you can choose to not do that. You don't have to conform to any sort of outline just because you're not, maybe your gender isn't the norm. And I still think that is being explored a lot within music at the minute, in terms of women in bands. But yeah, I'd like to touch on that topic, and I feel like it's something that is important.
Yeah, well, I think the ultimate thing is as well, anything that you find important, whatever meaning someone draws from your song, especially if you make them less personal, like you were saying, someone might interpret your song about femininity. They might take that on board, and that might help them in the way they think about, God knows, any society, any issue that they're experiencing or that their family's experiencing. So that's another reason why I think more impersonal and ambiguous lyrics are important. They don't have to be. I think there are some great straight down the line lyrics that just
for sure
that just hit home the point. But another thing I thought was quite important from what you said was that approaching that middle ground of how you sort of femininity in metal, the way you're talking about it is just in a normal way, like how I would talk about any other factor in my life, if you know what I mean. Like it's kind of normalizing, I think, in a good way. Like it's discussing it in. I don't know how to put it. Really, it's quite hard. I don't know how to phrase what I'm trying to say.
I think there's like a very, very fine line between celebrating the fact that there is this upsurge of women and non-binary people in bands, and also novelising the fact that uprising of different people to be in bands is been so prominent. I think then it's clear to see when somebody is novelising you, and that's when I feel most disrespected. And that would be kind of my reason for wanting to talk about it, because there are so many times where I either feel novelised or just completely disregarded, and the line between those two is, I don't know, both things I find almost
it's a pretty
equally
shitty
as
pick and mix between those two.
Yeah.
It's
like, don't get me wrong, I know that's sometimes somebody will be like, wow, I really like your band, blah blah blah, and then straight to the fact that I'm a woman. And to me, they could have just left it that they're like the band. And then it turns into almost this like patronizing, oh, aren't you good for having a go at that? And it's fine now, isn't it? And I think, hey, what are you going on about, man? I don't understand. From my point of view, I'm exactly the same as my bandmates, and so is every other woman in a band. And why do you need to comment on that? But I also understand the importance of expressing that to other people, but not wanting to, just make it into a novelty or something that's uncommon to some people.
I think the best place for it to be is in a place where you talk about it in the same way, like I said, you talk about any factor about someone's life in a band. Like it should be no more novel than like the color of my hair, or you know what I mean. Like that's obviously the ideal situation, isn't it? Where, well, it seems to me, I guess it's not obvious to me maybe, but that seems to be.
And it is something that I always wanted to shy away from talking about, up until really recently, just because I never wanted to get into that whole debate. I never wanted to be celebrated in a different way, other than my music, or
Well, so
whatever.
when I was thinking about what to write for the podcast,
Mm.
I was kind of thinking like, because the fact is, heavy metal is a very male-dominated sort of industry at the moment, right? And I was kind of thinking, do I ask you questions about like, being a woman in the industry? But I thought actually I haven't written anything about that purely because I thought I don't really want to ask you.
Yeah.
That, not that I don't want to talk about it. I think what we're talking about now is interesting, but I didn't want to ask you that because I kind of think I haven't asked any of the guys what it's like being a dude.
Sure.
And of course it's a different experience, and that's why if I were to have asked you about that question, it would have been from a place of like, what's your experience of it, not just like. What
For sure, I think. I think. To be honest, I'm appreciative that you haven't asked that.
Yeah.
Only because it is the question that I kind of anticipate all the time, and I feel like sometimes you're egged on to say that everything is awful and everything. Oh, it's awful for me, and it isn't awful for me, but that is just me. I don't think women should be put in a place where you have to speak for all women. Men wouldn't be asked to speak for all men, and that's why I don't really like that question. I'll talk about it if it's relevant.
Oh no, I didn't. No, that's the thing. I wasn't honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds
really
bad to say I wasn't so interested. Like I was interested in the conversation we've had now because I think that came from a much more interesting place.
Talking point rather.
Yeah, it's not something I just want to plaster and then make an Instagram reel about.
Yeah.
Although you said some really interesting stuff there, so I might make an Instagram reel about that. But that's again different reasons. Like I like to think that's coming from a better place. But yeah, like I was because that. But I guess that kind of brings home the point of how I, with no ill intentions at all, that was one of the things that came to my head as like a question for you.
Yeah, I would think that it probably would be a question that comes to people's minds. I'm not going to ever shoot somebody down for asking me about it, because some people do just, are interested. I think it's a really hard one. It's so hard because I just never want to paint this picture that everything is awful when it's really not. I just want everything to be normal.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing again.
I don't want it to flip either end of this scale, and that's just something that I think will be not the case in a few years. And this is kind of building the foundations for that to not be the case in the next few years.
Yeah, I guess like you were saying about sort of being hesitant to talk about it in songs, I guess obviously a big part of your audience is men as well, isn't it? So it's like obviously bringing that subject up to, there'll be a lot of men who aren't interested in hearing about that at all, and I don't mean in the sense they don't find it interesting, but they just don't, there'll be men out there that just don't want to hear it or just don't relate, in a more innocent way, just simply don't relate to it. So I think it's an important expressing it in the way that you're choosing to I think that's a really cool, a cool kind of approach to it. But I've got some other questions, maybe on lighter notes.
Thank God, my God, I've been wanting everybody to go in cry all night from my bloody talking.
It's good. Well, I'd rather talk about this than like.
I've gone down a hole here.
I'd rather talk about that than like as much. Your Jackson guitar is really cool. But like I could just drop you a message and be like, what about that pickup? Like it's not there's some guitar nerds out there that care about that, and maybe you can just reel all that off at the end. I don't know, but like I don't know, I just think there's more important things to talk about, really. We don't have to be changing the world here, but
I'm not the gal for the job with that, so
don't worry. I don't think my podcast is either, so it's fine. Yeah, so just looking at the popcorn question, that's not really the popcorn one.
It's being lightly, and then I'll just ruin it all.
No, it's back to popcorn. One thing that's kind of again that I was interested in is the band is like really heavy in places, and there's been this there's been this kind of trend I've noticed that regardless of how a band is presented kind of vocally.
Mm.
I've noticed a lot of bands just getting heavier, but a lot of them do it in kind of the same sort of way, you know. But I noticed you guys have a cool kind of different approach to being heavy, you know. There's, I mean, I don't know what I'd sort of define as like the normal way of being a heavy band, but well, I guess my question is in a kind of musical world where a lot of metal seems to be going, how heavy can we be in a certain way? How do you keep being like a heavy band, but keeping that interesting and fresh? Like, how do you go about doing that without falling into just being like another heavy band, you know?
I think, again, at the start of Heriot, it was something that kind of happened accidentally with like Dispirit. I think within our band there are so many different influences that all come under the same umbrella of heavy. You know, like we all love like noise bands, we all love like thrash bands, new metal bands, industrial bands, shoegaze bands, black metal bands, and I'd hope that all of that is kind of sprinkled around. But I think for all of us, we want to keep finding this band exciting to be in, I guess. Well, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't want to bloody do it.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think keeping our options really open is something that we endeavour to do, especially with the electronic side and the almost like shoegazy kind of side, the clean vocal side. You're almost spinning off into a whole different genre within those elements, and there's just so many different things that you can play with. With as much as we love all of those subgenres, we didn't really want to recreate just one of those genres. So that's kind of how we've got to this sound that sounds a bit like a blend of loads of different things. Yeah, I think hopefully, I really hope that it doesn't limit us in the future and just keeps our options open a bit more so people don't get bored and we don't get bored. And yeah,
I think there'll always be that obviously as bands grow, there's always that pressure to just be that bit more commercial.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, there's always like the bigger, and I don't know whether you've experienced it, because you guys obviously have made massive strides in the last year or so. And it's like, I don't know if you've maybe either sort of had outside pressure, or even if you've, and I'm not saying this is in your music, I'm saying, are you worried that this might happen more, is getting people going, oh, we'd love to work with you, just soften that bit, or whack a chorus in, you know. Is that something you kind of worry about? Because I know we kind of think like, I suppose we could go down the more rocky route, you know. With our band, we could go more, especially with the songs we have already. They're quite, if you put them on an acoustic guitar, they're quite listenable to a more
they sound
pop
amazing on an acoustic guitar as well.
Oh, thank you.
Seen your acoustic.
Oh, of course, you were at the
They're amazing. Seriously, so bloody good.
Oh, thank you.
Really,
that was quite we spent that week so Adam asked us about a week, it was about 6 days before the gig, and we were like, well, we don't really want to just do the metal songs on the acoustic, so I cancelled loads of my lessons and just rewrote loads of the riffs and like as acoustic parts. It was a very stressful week.
Right, that sounded wicked, seriously.
Yeah, thank you. Although the one thing, the Trivium, we did 2 Trivium songs, and we opened with Until the World Goes Cold, and that guitar part is so much like the first part in One by Metallica. And there was a couple of times when we were rehearsing it, I went duh, 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 duh. I was like, oh no, that is not it. I was like, I cannot open Trivium's event with Trivium's song in the style of Metallica. Like, I can't do that. That was
I don't think anybody would have minded, but
I don't know. Although what I did find funny was James was saying how I think he messed up a bit of Come As You Are, like he played the riff slightly differently or something, which I thought was quite good. It was like Nirvana's Nevermind's like 40th anniversary or something like that, and he played the riff a bit wrong or something, which is quite funny. But yeah. Anyway, what did I ask you? I can't remember what I asked you. Something about being
The
commercial.
commercialism. Yeah. I think, well, we have kind of discussed this within our band, that we just want to be a band that can be as heavy as we can be, because that's why we all wanted to join a band. That's where we love and get most excited about music. And for me personally, I've played like different styles of music, but I've never really enjoyed it. And I play guitar because I love playing heavy riffs. So why would I make that thing that I love more than anything else in the world into something that I don't feel sincere about? Doesn't matter whether we might not be as successful or whatever if we're playing heavy songs, because why would I want to be in a band if I'm playing music that I don't like? It seems totally mad to me.
It's a bit, well, it's like a lot of people get into music to get away from doing things they don't want to do. And for me, to be trapped in a band writing and playing things you don't like is like the ultimate irony.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Yeah, me too. I've been asked to do things in the past where maybe they would have led to big things or whatever, but I don't like the music, and so why would I dedicate all of my time to playing something that I don't like? It doesn't make sense for me. But with that being said, I think the style of heavy that we are now could change. I'm not saying that I want it to, but I'm not going to speak for myself in the next 5, 10, 15, hopefully years. But the heavy element will always be in this band because that is just life's best thing ever. So we'll never ever be a band that isn't heavy, whatever way that might be.
Quoting you on that.
Yeah, do it. I'll put my bloody head on that. I'll put my head on that for sure.
Yeah, that's because there's always that because the thing is, what will happen now is 10 years, find great success. 10 years down the line, you'll very naturally just go, you know what? I think we all want to do some lighter stuff. And you'll go, yeah. And I go, oh no, wait, I said I wouldn't.
But yeah, I'll watch his podcast back or listen to this podcast back.
Yeah.
Podcast back and be like, nah.
Yeah. Like, what was he on about? I had a really profound question or something. I'm sure it was. So for me, I think something that kind of recently that I've thought about, that I don't know if it's just being me being cynical. You can sort of make your own mind up, but what I find quite frustrating of being in a sort of up and coming or smaller band or wherever. Hopefully we're up and coming, I guess we'll see.
Oh my God, of course you are, mate.
But either way, the idea that like you got to work so hard for the right people to find you, and then only for them to find you and go, okay, we love what you do. Now I'll tell you what, let's change this, this, and this. I'm like, nah, go fuck yourself. Like if you like what we do, we'll do what we do, and if you want to get on board, then that's cool. Like I don't really like. I kind of find it frustrating, the idea that you have to put all this time, effort, and energy into the thing you love to get as far as you can, only for someone with a bit more money than you and a bit more influence to go like, okay, that's great, but have you thought about this or sign this over? And it's like, well, So I think we all want to find someone, not someone like record label management, whatever. All of these various people that you need to work with, or I guess you don't need to, but a lot of bands traditionally do. It's about finding the people, I think, that want to be on board with your mission statement rather than just...
Yeah. I think, look at Slipknot, they are so heavy.
Yeah.
They are a heavy band. Nobody can deny that Slipknot are a bloody heavy band. And look how massive they are. They're huge. Maybe I'm naive, but I don't see why that can't happen again. Why can't we have insanely heavy bands that are huge? Architects are still really heavy. They're massive. Slipknot, I don't see why we should limit metal to being commercial. If you want to be successful in the traditional ways. But maybe I'm too naive and starry-eyed and whatever, wishful thinking. But maybe. I think you can kind of create your own narrative with that. I don't know.
I think it's the way to go. I think it's more about, like you say, creating your own. Yeah, I think someone's got to do it, you know.
Yeah.
I
And
think
why
like
can't it be any of our bands?
exactly. There you go. Yeah, that'd be cool. Catch you. Well, I'd say catch it download. I won't be there, but you certainly will, which is pretty cool. So that must be exciting. Is that a bit of a what's the word?
Oh my.
Bucket list moment?
Yeah. Oh God. Here she goes. Yeah, for me it's like the number one thing in life ever. I know
Yeah.
that some people listen to it and be like, oh bloody hell. But I really mean that with my whole bloody chest. Like, I can't tell you how insane it is that we're playing that festival. And I've spoke about it loads of times recently, but and it sounds cheesy. This is sincere. It's not a bloody Disney story or whatever, but that festival honestly changed my whole perspective on everything ever. I went in 2011 and I just went for the day. I think I was 12 or 13. I didn't even really want to be there, if I'm being honest. Like, my dad took me and was like, we're going to this. And I was like, oh, okay. I remember playing on my DS in the morning, my Nintendo DS.
It's way more fun.
Had to go. Yeah, Nintendogs, you know. Keeping them alive, making them do the tricks. And then we went and we saw like Skunk Anansie,
cool,
Alice Cooper, Twisted Sister. I think it was Avenged Sevenfold. And I swear to you, I was so overwhelmed by just how amazing it all was, that everything I've ever done since that day has been different. I don't know what I'd be doing now if I hadn't gone to that festival on that day. I really mean that. So to play it is mental.
It's cool that you have that, because like I don't think I could tell you about a particular moment where I decided that I wanted to do that sort of heavy metal and that guitar and all of that. I don't think there was there wasn't like a moment, like this is the moment kind of thing where I thought that's what I kind of want to do, or at the very least, I could do, or at least it wasn't. I don't think I ever had like that moment that was like that one moment spark. It was over the course of several things happening that I started to decide that it was what I found enjoyable, and that what I really want to pursue. But it's cool that you've got like a moment in time.
Yeah, like that definitely tipped it for me. I mean, growing up,
tipping point's the word.
Yeah, growing up, my dad would play me like Sabbath and Metallica and bands like that, Judas Priest, bands like that. And like, I always enjoyed those bands a lot. And then when I got to secondary school, it kind of fizzled out because I guess I just was influenced by other music, but it didn't take me long to get back into it. But then to really fall for it, like everything kind of clicked in my head, like, actually, no, I really like this music. And then it was like, this is the best thing on earth ever, and I think I'll change everything about me to make it about this.
I did it without going into my whole life story. I did a similar thing where got into it as a kid and sort of played guitar for a bit, and then didn't pick it up again until I was about 18 or so.
Me too.
And it's like, I was like, oh, got to catch up.
It was like when I went to that festival, I was obviously watching these people play guitar on stage and stuff, and I was like, hang on, I can play guitar. And then the more I got into bands and then them talking about another thing I can remember is watching one of You Meet Six's documentary about how they joined a band. I know it was like oh my God, I could do that. And I remember going downstairs, going into the living room and going, Dad, I think I'm going to join a band. And he was like, okay. And then I went back upstairs and went on like joinmyband.com.
Been there.
And then had my first band practice that Sunday. And then I think, not like, I haven't always been in serious bands at all, but I've always been in some sort of musical project since that bloody You Meet Six documentary.
That's cool. It's cool that you can pinpoint these moments. I'm sure I could if I put my mind to it, but I don't think there aren't sort of things that I think Slipknot were for me a big turning point where I heard something. They were the first band I think I heard that like really struck a chord. I when I was younger, I listened to like Metallica, and I really liked Pantera as well. When I was sort of, it was weird. I got the guitar before I knew who Dimebag was.
No way.
I got this sparkly the lightning guitar. There's a picture. Tell you what, I'll show you after. I've got a picture of me when I was. I'll go and grab it, but then you can see my whole living room behind this blur, and it ruins the illusion. Yeah, there's a picture of me when I'm about 12. And like I said, I played for a couple of years or so when I was a kid, and with the Dimebag guitar, and I was like, whose guitar is this? Because I knew, and then it was Dimebag, and I remember listening to like some Pantera, like, whoa. But even then, it still didn't quite, coming back to it, I was like, oh, that is really good. But Slipknot, there was something about that really resonated with me, and I couldn't say why. I think it was because it felt like it went beyond just being heavy. Like there was that idea that Metallica, really heavy, or like you go to look at like Dio, but they're not, I didn't find they were singing songs about things that meant something to me personally. Whereas when you hear Slipknot songs, ironically, even after all we've said, there's lots of stuff about I and me in those songs, and I think that kind of pulled me in more than like Metallica or you know, people singing about dragons and battle and stuff like that. As much as that's really cool, and it's a nice like mental break from the devastating sort of topics in metal. But like I found that drew me in a lot more than the more traditional metal songs about like God knows whatever, nothing of great substance. Like they'd be great songs, but sometimes the lyrics are just like any Motley Crue song ever, you know what I mean? Like it just kind of do the lyrics mean a great deal? I don't really know, but I think that drew me in more, perhaps, to completely go back on everything we've said.
No, I'm not saying that I don't listen to songs with I and me and put my own spin on them. I just don't know whether I want everybody else listening to me going me.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, there's enough of them, and there are some doing it really well. But there's.
I'll let them carry on, crack on, hun.
It's the best way to be. Just let it be. In the famous words of that was Slipknot, wasn't it? I think. Duality by the Beatles. There was one more thing I wanted to say before, but I can't remember what it was. I'm awful at this. I really shouldn't be doing this. I can't think of what I was trying to say. I saw. I don't know if you'd be jealous of this. I got two things I think you'd be jealous of. One is I met Tony Iommi before I started at BIM.
When he opened it.
Yeah.
Oh, bloody hell.
Yeah.
That's mad.
I know, it's quite cool, isn't it? Although I did mess up a guitar solo in front of him. That's another story.
I'm sure he won't remember.
I hope not. But then the other one was I went to, again, this is when I started to really get into Slipknot. I went to see Corey Taylor in London when he played an acoustic set. I don't know if you were there, perhaps, but
I can tell
that
you
was
what
a wicked gig.
Sorry.
No, so it was about 1,000 people. It was at Coco in Camden.
I think I've seen photos from that show. Yeah,
he released the set a few years later, but that was a big turn. I think maybe I could pinpoint that as a turning point. That was a really cool show, and I think it's again hearing metal but like presented in a way that you can resonate with. I think was really cool. But I'll stop going on now. What I will ask you is the moment of truth. How are we going to start the conversation with the next person?
This might be chaotic.
Oh, whatever. Honestly, it can be a really profound and meaningful question. It can be total BS. I don't care. Like, as long as it's fun.
Have you ever peed in a swimming pool?
You don't know how. Like, I might have some really old, well-respected guest on the next one.
Let them tell the truth.
Well, I hope they do. I can tell you what. I'm going to quickly look. I won't going to say, but I'm going to look at who the next. Okay, I mean, it's like, it's not someone I know well enough to ask that question to without someone else telling me to. So this should be fun. I will ask.
Can you say who it is, or is that
who the next person is?
Yeah.
It actually change your answer.
Hi.
No, you won't change your answer. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Or your question even. You didn't answer it. Yeah. And the other thing is, if you could plug a band. Some sort of band. It doesn't have to be like an up and coming band, but just one you think people should listen to for whatever Whatever.
I just find this really hard because I want to say loads of people, but I am gonna say Trauma Bond.
Trauma Bond.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. What are we talking?
Noise.
Yep.
They're a noise band, and I just think I don't know why lots of people haven't switched on to him because they're amazing. They're so good. And their imagery and their album artwork is amazing as well, and they're just heavy as balls, so everybody should go and listen to them.
That's great. That's just wicked. Cool. Well, I mean, I think it's a good place to. Heavy as balls is a good place to round everything off. And then I look forward to asking my next. Thanks for that. I look forward to asking my next guest if they've ever peed in a swimming pool. Wouldn't you hate it if I was somehow talking to Tony Iommi?
No, I'd love it.
Actually, well, funnily enough, he brought out that fragrance, didn't he? So he'll be fine. He can pee in the swimming pool and then he can just spray it all on and he'll be all right. Have you seen that? The Tony Iommi?
No.
Oh, it's just...
No.
Oh, no, sorry, Tony, but I don't agree. He's made like a fragrance and a metal song with it. I'm just like, what? It's not the most metal thing in the world, is it? Like,
no, but that almost makes it more metal.
Well, yeah, I guess there's that element of going against. But there was something. It just judge for yourself, I guess. I don't know, but I was just like, really, like, what does that? I don't know. I just thought of his whole illustrious career as godfather of heavy metal. I was just like, what? It's a bit of a like. Here's my deodorant range.
I like it. I like it.
As long as it smells.
But only now because I want to know what the perfume bottle looks like.
Yeah. Well, the question is, does it just smell of like sweaty blokes in a metal audience?
Does it? I can't name any venues because then they'll be like, "Rah, what did you say that for?" But I imagine it to smell like a sticky floor venue.
Yeah.
But I know that it won't. It will probably smell
like a real non-stick floor venue.
Yeah, the opposite.
Yeah.
Imagine the most opposite of a sticky floor venue.
Yeah, there you go, Tony. I'm sure you'll be fine. Wicked. Cool. Thank you. I'll we'll call it at that.